Taxes are a powerful tool that can shape markets in unexpected ways. In this module, we'll explore how a tax on a specific good, like cigarettes, affects the equilibrium price and quantity, and how the tax burden is shared between producers and consumers alike. We'll also look at the impact on government revenue and discuss how elasticity of demand plays a critical role in determining who pays more of the tax. By the end, you'll understand why taxes can discourage consumption, raise revenue, and create market distortions.
Governments might want to impose a tax on something to collect some revenue so they can spend it on government programs, or they might want to change people's behavior with that tax. So for a motivating example, we'll think through this question here up at the top. How do you get people to reduce unhealthy behaviors, right? You want to make them more expensive. We know from our demand module, right? When you make something more expensive, raise the price of it, quantity goes down, right? And so we want the quantity of some sort of unhealthy or bad behavior to go down, and you can use taxes to do that. So the motivating example here is going to be about soda taxes to try to get people to consume less soda. So here at this newspaper headline from the Philadelphia Inquirer from a few years ago, showing that beverage sales went down in cities that enacted soda taxes. Philly saw the biggest change. So Philadelphia is one of the first cities to impose a soda tax, and this was going to be like 25 cents per bottle for like small 22-ounce bottle of soda, right? And the idea was they can reduce people's unhealthy behavior drinking soda, and it actually worked, right? So the study found that sugary beverage sales went down as prices went up across 5 cities with soda taxes. And Philadelphia saw the biggest changes. The reason being is that Philadelphia had a much larger per unit tax, the cost, the amount of the tax relative to these other cities. And so what we want to get out of this module is to be able to answer questions about how do taxes affect prices and quantities of goods, and are they efficient? So what are going to be the welfare or surplus consequences? Who are going to be the winners and losers, as well as individual people like buyers or sellers, as well as society as a whole from these taxes? All right. So taxes here are going to be an example of when governments are going to intervene into a market. And the things we want to be able to do in terms of the questions we want to get through this module, like what happens to price and quantity of soda consumption when Philadelphia places a tax on soda? Then we want to, does the tax make the soda market more or less efficient? We'll find it makes it less efficient. And then we want to know who bears the burden of the tax. Will it be the buyers or the sellers that bear the majority of that burden? Or is it going to be split 50-50? All right, we're going to start off with some definitions. We have this idea of tax incidence. Now, incidence just means like who is hit by this tax. Okay? And so we have legislative incidence. Legislative incidence is who the tax is levied on. This means like who has to write the check to the government. So this would be something like, well, the government says the buyers have to pay the check to the government, or the sellers have to pay the check to the government. An example here would be gas taxes. Now, when you go to the gas station to put gas in your car, there's lots of state and local and federal gas taxes in there, but those taxes are included in the price, right? And so like the buyer isn't writing an extra check for those taxes. It's the seller that has to write those checks out of the price that they collect from that buyer, right? And so gas taxes, because they're included in the price that you pay, the posted price that you see up on the sign, right? This is going to be the legislative burden is going to be on the sellers. Okay. Now, when you go to Kroger and you pay sales taxes on your groceries, the posted price that you see in the aisle, does that include the tax, the sales tax? It doesn't, right? You only know the amount of sales tax once you go up to the cash register and you get everything registered in, and then it'll tell you, okay, here's the price you have to pay Kroger, and then you also have to pay this extra sales tax. Right? So that is not included in the price. Included in price. And so that's going to be the legislative burden will be on the buyers there in that case. That's kind of how you can tell in the real world of where the legislative burden lies. Right? Now Kroger is going to collect collect those sales taxes for you and send an actual check to the government. It's just easier that way than you like, okay, I have to add up all year of how much I'm spending at Kroger. Okay, 5% of that. And then I'm going to write the check to the government at the very end. No, it's just easier for Kroger to collect those taxes, even the sales taxes, even though the legislative burden is on the buyer. All right. Legislative incidence will be who the government says pays it. Economic incidence, though, means who ultimately pays the tax via a higher price, right? This is going to be the actual economic burden, right? Who bears the real burden of the tax in terms of like lost surpluses? This is what we mean by economic incidence, okay? We'll get to more of this later on in the very end. What we need for right now is that the legislative tax does the law say the buyer or the seller have to pay it? This is going to be important because it's going to tell us which curve to shift to model how to model how the tax works, right? Is it going to shift the supply or the demand curve? If the legislative incidence is like a sales tax, buyer pays the tax, then we're going to shift the demand curve. If the tax is like a gas tax and it's going to be legislative burden on the sellers, then we're going to shift the supply curve. And so this is what we need to know about legislative incidence and legislative burden right now, is for who's going to shift that curve. Everything we're going to do will be per unit taxes. So this is also called an excise tax. There's lots of things that are like this. Taxes on cigarettes, taxes on gasoline, taxes on alcohol are like $1 per unit, right? That's a fixed dollar amount per unit on every single purchased unit sold. There's lots of things that are also percentage tax. And so this is called an ad valorem. And so it's going to be 5% of the sales amount or 5% of the revenue. That's going to be paid in tax. Those are, you can model, you're not going to learn any more economics if we model this. It's just the math is a little bit harder, right? So everything, like the main economic lessons you learn are also going to apply to these ad valorem taxes, like a percentage tax on something. There's lots of these things in the world too. All right, so our example here that we're going to work through for per unit tax is going to be that Philadelphia imposed a 30% tax. Sorry, not 30%, 30-cent tax. That's going to be very careful. We're an excise tax, per unit tax. 30-cent tax on every single unit of soda sold for a 2-liter equivalent, just to keep it easy. Okay, so we're going to start with showing you how to model this 30-cent tax on buyers. Then we'll show you how to model this 30-cent tax on sellers.